How long is it going to take for energy producers to realize how much money they're leaving on the table by ignoring Bitcoin mining?
Yeah. So I spend a lot of time, probably the bulk of my time, meeting with energy teams. And prior to working at Unchained, I had a consulting business, just teaching Bitcoin. And most of I've lived in Houston my whole life. I was in the energy business. It's just kind of my friend group, right? And they're very curious about Bitcoin. And they're figuring it out. And, in the last month, I've met with the largest independent producer in the Gulf of Mexico, right? So they've got rigs all over the Gulf. Well, they have more gas than they can use on the rig. And they flare it.
And just for the audience, that quite literally means they're burning the energy produced for nothing, right? It's just flaring it off.
They just lit money on fire.
And by plugging a Bitcoin miner there, you could turn that burned money into money in your pocket.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So they're beginning to realize that it's another commodity.
Yeah.
Right. It's that hash rate, that Bitcoin, right? That's the commodity.
Yeah.
And these guys are commodity experts, and they're infrastructure experts. And, no matter what picture you paint of the roughnecks that work on those rigs, those people are hardworking and they are smart and they are technically capable. Yeah. And they're figuring it out. So that's just one example, right? So it's the offshore guys.
Is that so that's the hang up then, is the realization that Bitcoin is another commodity? Because it seems like and I've talked to way less people in this space than you, but the few that I have just tend to conflate FTX with Bitcoin. It's like, oh, well, if FTX went away, how do I know Bitcoin's not going to go away? And you're just like, as a Bitcoiner, you're banging your head against the wall. Is that the problem? They don't understand, or it's dawning on them that Bitcoin is something different than all of the other crypto space, crypto exchanges, et cetera?
I think that's wholly the problem.
Yeah.
Right. They have not. I think step one, Robert, with explaining Bitcoin to someone is that someone needs to, and I always ask people, please agree with me that Bitcoin is knowable. Right. I feel very firmly that if I can understand Bitcoin, anyone can understand Bitcoin.
Yes.
Right. Like I joke that my grades weren't great in college, yet I got out and have had a just banger of a life and banger of a career.
Yeah.
Because I've found things that are hyper interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I feel like if people will just dig into Bitcoin, there's so many aspects to it, right?
Yeah.
Like find your way in, because this is the most hopeful, exciting thing that you can possibly think about. Everyone in the Bitcoin space would agree,
yes.
right? And like there's room for more. Come into the space. So so I think people don't allow themselves to know about it. They do conflate it with, my least favorite C word, crypto. And then, you and I were talking before, another issue that I see is, and this is specific to some other energy executives who are slowly coming around. Let's be honest, like those teams are leaders, right? And they are winners and they are high achievers. And there's a lot of research that shows that if you didn't first discover something, then you won't adopt it, right? A first adopter wants to be a first adopter. There's a really interesting study at MIT. I think the professor's name was Christian Castellani. And it goes into that if you first don't find something, if someone else finds something and shows it to you.
So that's ego.
It's totally ego.
Yeah.
But ego aside, from a power producer's point of view, right? So there's a very large power producer that sits in Houston. These guys, so they're using natural gas to generate power, and it's being sent to ERCOT, the Texas grid that everybody's heard so much about. That's actually so brittle and frail that Bitcoin is helping fix. Bitcoin will help fortify that system.
Yeah.
But these power producers pay ERCOT to take power. Some of the time, a non-0% of the time.
Now that is especially mind-blowing to me, that there are times when energy producers are paying counterparties to sell their power to them.
Right.
So it's like a negative price almost.
Yes. Well, it's more cost effective for them to do that than for them to shut off, right? For them to shut down.
Right.
So you're a natural gas power plant.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just more cost efficient for you to just pay ERCOT, because I don't know today what that is.
Right.
It's 2% or 4% of the time, but it's a non-0% of the time.
Right.
And it's just better. Same thing with
and Bitcoin could be buying that instead.
Well, they should be.
Yeah.
Right. Like either drop miners on site. You definitely, if you run a power plant, you definitely have people that are technically skilled and can figure out how to plug these computers in. I mean, I'm figuring out how to plug one in myself, so it clearly can't be hard. But yeah, I mean, or you get to a firm that's like Entergy, right? A utility that has all these wind turbines. Well, again, I mean, there's times when the grid can't take their generation. And so it from a maintenance perspective, they're much better off. In fact, this has been researched. I'm in touch with a guy, young guy who doesn't work in Bitcoin, who wants to come work in Bitcoin. And he did a really academic study on the effect Bitcoin mining could have on wind turbine efficiency. Because turning them off and turning them back on, it's like a few years ago, I was like, I guess running a bunch of errands or something in my car, and I had to replace my battery after a year. And my service advisor, super great guy, was like, yeah, because you start and stop all day long, and that's way more wear on your battery than if you just drive all day long.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same with these turbines.
Right.
So, don't turn your turbine off, mine Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah, it's the starting and stopping costs. These are like frictional costs on the total operating model. And so Bitcoin just lets you never need to curtail, maybe not never, but you can curtail or turn off a lot less often if you just sell those molecules into the Bitcoin network.
Right. You're monetizing every molecule.
Yeah, it's quite the no-brainer. That's why I'm so surprised it's taken energy producers this long. But I guess it is just it's kind of this basic Bitcoin education piece that's just not there yet, right? Bitcoin's new enough to where people still conflate it with crypto exchanges and other things that clearly aren't Bitcoin.
Okay. So again, back to the MIT study. There are folks running these energy companies, these leaders, these innovators, these winners, right? Who may have been told about Bitcoin back in 2011 or 2012. In fact, I know they were. And I know there's an instance where, one of their kind of social groups, somebody came into the social group and said, 2011, look, I don't even know what this is, but we all need to buy $1,000 of it. Everybody in here, we should all just buy $1,000 Bitcoin in 2011. And no one did, not even the guy that said, everybody should buy $1,000 Bitcoin. Right. So again, if you're not an early adopter and you have this leader, winner, innovator mentality, ego is really a problem. Like you're getting in your own way.
That is sounds like the source of, at least a source of Bitcoin derangement syndrome.
Yeah, I heard that for the first time this week.
Yeah, if people don't get it on their own terms, maybe, then they just kind of refuse to get it at all.
Right.
But the opportunity cost of that, I would argue, egoic behavior is compounding, obviously, as Bitcoin number go up. So I guess all of this grounds out in that very popular saying now that everyone gets Bitcoin at the price they deserve.
Yeah.